made them come to Leicester, and what was the driver? What was the reason why they left their own countries or whichever country they were in at the time to come to Leicester? And Leicester is changed. It's changed dramatically. It's totally different to lots of other cities in the UK, and I think the diversity and the vibrancy of the city is really a testament to how the diverse communities have brought everybody together. And you just have to look on Evington Road, Narborough Road, and some of the other roads. You don't have to travel the world to get these delicious cuisines. You can go to any part of our city and get food from all parts of the world. It's fantastic. But why did we end up in Leicester? How did people come into Leicester? And what was life like in Leicester? So I'm really grateful we have Ayub Majothi, who's on with us this morning, and tell us about what happened and how he ended up in Leicester. Good morning, Ayuba. Assalamu alaikum.
Good morning. Assalamu alaikum.
Thank you very much for joining us this morning. Ayuba, you came. When did you actually come to Leicester? When did you arrive?
I arrived in Leicester on the 5th of September 1972.
And where did you come from?
I came from Uganda.
Uganda. Okay. Now, one of the main questions, I understand that Idi Amin had decreed in 1972 that professionals like doctors, consultants, accountants, teachers, engineers, etc., could not leave Uganda, even though they were British Asians. You were a teacher at the time, and how did you make your way on board a plane? And why did Idi Amin make the decision to get rid of all of the Asian community in Uganda in 1972?
When you said all, it was even the Uganda citizens. Asians were Uganda citizens. They were also asked to leave the country. Now, I took a chance to go to the airport, though at that time they used to put your profession on the passports. And I had a British passport which said teacher as my profession, and my wife had a Uganda passport which also said teacher. So I had to leave it in the hands of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and I went to the airport on that night of 4th of September, and just saying goodbye to the rest of the first one in the very big extended family to leave my town. And we had to actually go through 15 roadblocks in the 150-kilometer journey from my village to the Entebbe airport.
Whoa, 15 roadblocks. And at all those roadblocks, were you stopped and questioned?
We were stopped and questioned, but fortunately our driver spoke the language of the army people, who were, of course, all Idi Amin soldiers. And he said, this is a Malimu, this is a teacher, let's not trouble him. And he's got small children. My two sons were 2.5 and 9 months respectively. And we didn't have much problem, and we had a lot of money with us, which we started saying, this is the goodbye money for you, buy something for your children. And we reached the airport, but at the airport, the scenes were completely different. There were army people all over with machine guns there. And my wife says, I don't think we are going to leave this place alive. I said, if you don't leave it alive, fine, the driver knows, you'll go and inform our families. Now, at that time, it was so busy, it was nearly 12:30 after midnight. And the airport authority had borrowed people from Kenya and Uganda, the custom officers, immigration officers, because at that time we had East African community. And fortunately for me, with Allah's mercy, my custom officer was a Tanzanian, and Tanzanians were at war with Amin at that time. So he asked me, where are you going? I said, I'm going to Britain. Where is your ticket? I showed him the ticket. Fine. What about, you are a teacher, you're not allowed to go. And since my childhood, we had integrated with the Africans there. So I knew a lot about the African culture, not only African culture, but I grew up with the Hindus and Sikhs. So I was aware of their attitude towards the family values. And I told the man, I said, look, if I don't go to UK with my wife, who's a Uganda citizen, here is the passport, she's going to divorce me. What about my children? I'm going to miss my children. And he said, no, 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 no. In African culture, boys are the property of the father. And I said, no, anyway, that's a different matter. And he started asking me many questions. Do you know you are going to be strip searched, even your wife? And I had told my wife that if you are going to be strip searched, that make the children cry and get busy with the children. Pinch them, do something. You see, we had to use all those tricks. And I don't know how these ideas came in my mind. And then I went for the strip search, and they didn't do it to me. And I said, look, I've been born here. I've been here 30 years and have nothing to take with me. Why are you strip searching me? And they said, oh, just come in here in this cabin. We do nothing to you. They did nothing. They didn't take my wife. And then the custom officer told me, he said, look here, I'm only passing my time. I'll let you go. But you can't be sure whether you'll be allowed to board the plane because they will check your passport even on the stepping ladder into the plane. Well, I said, I'll see what I can do when that happens. So we were not sure we were going to leave the airport. So much was happening there, and they were actually taking off all the jewelry from the wrists and from the necklaces from the neck, and people are crying and children are crying, and we were allowed to sit in the plane until the door closed. We were not sure whether we were going to leave Uganda. That was the situation.
Wow. And it must have been chaotic scenes at the airport, totally.
Chaotic scenes, and that was on the day I went, but we got the stories later on what had happened. People were not allowed to take even the goods with them. They looked at them at the airport.
Yeah.
And when I had a small plane, I had nowhere to go. I knew when I reached Stansted Airport in UK, the Resettlement Board at that time had not started its work. I could not get in touch with two of my brothers who came here in April 72. Both were in London. And one had already moved to Leicester from London, and one was in London. And there you are. We landed after being in Benghazi, in Libya, and then went to Brussels. So many children on the plane, no milk, nothing at all, no food, enough food. And I told my wife, I said, we'll survive, don't worry. We had smuggled 15 pounds with us, with which we bought the milk at the Benghazi airport. And I was left with 8 pounds when I came to the Stansted airport. And that is where I knew that we are going to face a lot of problems with the authorities. The custom officer says, have you got anything to declare? I said, I don't know what I have to declare. I don't know the value of the goods I should have. He said, well, you'll have to pay something. I said, look here, if the British government is poor, keep my things. All right, keep all my things, give me a receipt, and then I'll come and claim it later on. At the moment, we are very tired, and I am not even prepared to talk to you. He said, look, I'm an official. I said, you go to hell. I don't care who you are, but you are not going to trouble us anymore. Do you know how we have left the country? Do you know I come to the country of my adoption? I don't call myself a refugee. Now, what do I do? I told him that I've got the numbers, all the national newspapers, and I did that in Uganda when we were facing difficulty with the British High Commission, people standing in the queue for 3 days. I had actually an interview which was broadcast in this country and got them to get more staff from Home Office to work at the High Commission. The Aga Khan gave the next door building to the High Commission free of charge to British High Commission, and Inder Singh Gill created the counters for them according to their measurements. So I said, I've got these numbers and I'm going to call the media here and I'm going to expose you how you're behaving with people. This is not the right time. And I looked outside Stansted Airport, and there was a kid standing there, and he was waving at me. And I said, "Oh, this is one of my students." I was a teacher in Uganda. And when he allowed me to go, he asked me, "Sir, where do you want to go?" I said, "I don't know. My brother is not picking up his phone in London. I got nothing to, I'm probably going to stay here and then get some help." He said, "I'll come to pick some people up from our town. Did you see this family in the plane?" I said, "No, they were not there." He said, "Would you like to, your brother is in Leicester. Would you like to go to Leicester? Because my van is empty." And I actually said, "Okay." But I said, "He will not take me free of charge." And I paid him the last £8. I said, "You must take this."
So you had £8 and you spent the £8 coming to Leicester.
Sorry, I had £8.50. I gave him 8 and I came to Leicester with 50 pence in my pocket.
Did you know where you actually were going at that time?
No, I didn't know, because I didn't know where my brother was.
So what did you do when you got to Leicester?
Yeah, I had a friend, my classmate in early 50s, whose number I had because I had come to UK in June of that year to see some test matches. And I phoned him. I said, "Do you know where Dawood is, my brother?" He said, "Yes, Ayub, I know. Where are you?" I said, "I'm in Leicester now, and I'm on Melbourne Road." He said, "Wait, I'm coming there, and I know where the Dawood is staying." This was all the mercy of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, that he had planned things for me.
And how did you there was a mad rush to get out of Uganda. Thousands and thousands of people by Idi Amin, who just overnight just said that these people must leave, effectively, almost.
Yeah.
And how many do you think, did so many people, how many people do you think actually got out of Uganda at that time? And how many people were left or struggled or?
Yeah, there were, in fact, 30,000 people came to the UK because they were British passport holders. And there were about 10,000 Africans also allowed to come here who were persecuted by Idi Amin. And also, in fact, when Mrs. Councillor Davis put that advert in the Uganda Argus urging people not to come to Leicester.
So there was an advert placed in a Ugandan newspaper by Leicester City Council warning people that do not come to Leicester, actually telling people don't come to Leicester, we're not going to look after you, we're not going to do anything for you. Is that what they were saying, basically?
Exactly. And I got that advert, I preserved it with me. And they said you will not have housing. There are several thousand families are already on the council waiting list. Hundreds of children are awaiting places in schools. Already social and health services are already stretched to their limits. So in our own interest and families' interest, we should not come to Leicester and accept the advice of the Uganda Resettlement Board. Now, Resettlement Board never told us not to come to Leicester. Yes. There was no Resettlement Board when I left Uganda.
So basically in 1972, the council of the day was rejecting people coming to Leicester and actually actively putting adverts in international newspapers telling people not to come to Leicester.
They did it. Yes, they did it. And we actually read those adverts, and I was aware of that. But then I said to myself, if I have nowhere to go and I would go to Leicester, who are these people to tell me not to come to Leicester? Leicester doesn't belong to the city council. It doesn't belong to anybody.
It belongs to the people.
Yeah, it belongs to people, and I'm going to go there.
Yeah.
And when I came here, I found out on the following day, I could only stay one night at my brother's house because he also was living in one room with a wife and two small daughters, same ages as my children. And the landlord asked him to move out. He said, "You can't have your brother here." But then there were some people who had already come on the quota voucher before this expulsion, whom I could get in touch with, and they found me an accommodation with a English person who was a convert Muslim.
So
And
you know when you came to Leicester and you know what were the first few problems? Was the difficulty about the housing and getting somewhere to stay, and you know what was the atmosphere as well? You know,
that first was very bad because a National Front, who was actually based in New Parks in Leicester, were very rife in Leicester at that time, and they were everywhere at the DHSS office, which is DWP now. They were at the railway station, and they used to have so many demonstrations in Leicester at that time. And I remember one instance when I had to go to the railway station, somebody sent me a telegram saying that arriving Leicester station, please receive. And I went there, and National Front people came to me, and fortunately, I say fortunately, they could have beaten me up, they could have done anything to me. I wasn't afraid. And there was a railway police there and also the local police there. And they asked those people to move away and told me, why are you here? I said, if I've come to receive a family. They said, we'll come with you and we'll help you out. That is where the first time I put my trust into the police.
Yeah.
That they are here for your safety. And I found out there was a East African Welfare Society which was formed to help people who came to Leicester. And late Dr. Seth and Ratu Singh and Mr. Pandit, they were running it. And they were based at the flyover near the Belgrave Gate in the corner. Yes. And I said, I'm offering my services to you.
And you're listening to Radio Ramadan on 87.9 FM. You're listening to Memory Lane. We're talking to Ayub Majothi about how he arrived into the UK from Uganda in 1972 and what life was like. You can text in or WhatsApp in on our phone number, which is 077 488 55055. Or if you've got any questions, you can also call in. Our telephone number is 0116 4822 You're listening to Radio Ramadan on 87.9 FM. Ayuba, you were talking about you came to Leicester and there was what other problems were facing. Were your school places available for your children? Was that difficult in getting a job?
Yes, it was very, very difficult. It was not difficult getting a job, but the big three industries here were footwear industry, textile, and imperial typewriter. And you could get a job, but I was thinking to myself, am I going to end up with all that knowledge I have in education, being a piece worker in a factory? No, that's what the employers thought. Just employ these people, they'll take any jobs. And people did that. So job was not a problem, but housing was a problem. It was a big, big problem. School was the greatest problem we had because our children could not go to school. And we formed a pressure group here in Leicester with the help of local English people to remind the Director of Education, I think it was Mr. Davis who was the Director of Education at the County Hall, to tell him under the Education Act 1944, every child is supposed to have education in this country. So what are you going to do about our children who are sitting at home? And they there at the Crown Hill School took some mobile classrooms and at Beckerley Road and the Mott Community College, in fact, they had completely they drew new lines for the catchment areas so that the people could go to any school. But there were no places in school, and finding a job of a teacher, that was my biggest regret.
I mean, you mentioned there's lots of jobs available at the time, but what kind of jobs were they? Because Leicester was a totally different city in 1972. As you mentioned, Imperial Typewriter Building. They were making typewriters in Leicester? Is that what was happening? And there was different buildings?
Yeah, they were making typewriters here. This was an American company. Cora had employed many, many people in the knitwear industry. British Shoe also on McDonald Road. But these were the jobs which probably people wouldn't like to do, because most of the people are businessmen, or the young children had no idea about what job to do, because they were helping the family businesses. So it was the jobs of piecework in the factory. Engineer. I ended up being a bonus clerk in an engineering firm, because they won't accept my qualifications as teacher. I obtained during colonial times in Uganda, and Department of Education and Science said, sorry, you have to go for 3-year teacher training and pay for it, because you haven't been in this country for 3 years. This is the bureaucracy and red tape. I said, what do I do? Where do I put my knowledge? Use me as a supply teacher. Use me as a liaison officer. I know the psychology. I know the parents. I know the children. And I say I was a tutor when I left Uganda. I got a lot of knowledge. Use it free of charge. They said, go to London or Scotland if you want to be a supply teacher. And I had to be rude and say, you are not going to tell me what I'm going to do with my life. Okay.
But the thing, the surprising thing here is there was plenty of jobs. There you have the city council telling people not to come to Leicester. You have plenty of jobs in the sort of manufacturing industries across Leicester,
Yes.
But was there a social life? Was the mosques there? Were they? We take everything for granted now. You just have to look along Evington Road and you see you've got probably more than 24 takeaways to choose from halal food. And what was that sort of scenario? The food, and because you're used to getting sort of all the vegetables and everything else that you had in Uganda, and that was that available here, and was that the same?
It was not available so much, but it could still get it. And Uganda Asians were very, very, they could venture into anything, and it didn't take them long to start. At that time, they were going to build a highway on Belgrave Road area, and they had started getting rid of slums in that area, which brought the prices of the house down. So people who had some money, and it wasn't difficult to get loans from the bank if you came from Uganda. Within 6 months, I had bought my own house because.
Wow! And you came with 50 pence.
50 pence.
50
yes.
pence. 6 months later, you're buying a house.
Yeah,
that's absolutely impossible now, isn't it? You need 20 years to save.
You need to save. You need to pay so much deposit and interest rates and all that. But as I said, there was a lot of, if you had a bank account in Uganda and you went to that bank, they would look at you, and they had a lot of respect for all the banks for people from Uganda, because they knew they were hardworking. They would pay up the loans. They would do everything to pay the loans up in good time. So, yeah, that was the situation. But education, as I said, the children started going to school, and we were, in fact, I was interviewed by about 10 TV stations all over the world, because whenever anybody went to County Hall and said, you want to interview somebody, they were sent them to me.
Yeah, because
I made them a promise. I said, I promise you, in 20 years' time, half of our councillors will be Indians. This city will depend on the economy, for its economy, on the people from other parts of the world. I didn't say Uganda. I'm thankful to people from Kenya who were already in Leicester at that time.
So you felt that lots of people from different backgrounds, even though they were different from Uganda, they were almost like your catalyst and helping you to settle in Leicester, because they were used to new people coming in. Yes,
that's right. I mean, in the local community, they had a lot of resentment when he came, because from Idi Amin calling us British Asians, the media here started calling us Uganda Asians.
Okay. We're just about to go to a break. And we'll please join us after the break, Ayub. We're going to be talking further about the contribution of the Ugandan Asians and all
Sure.
Asian communities. You're listening to Radio Ramadan on 87.9 FM. I'm your host, Zuffar Haq. You're listening to Memory Lane. Please join us after the break, and we'll talk more about Leicester in the 1970s. Assalamu alaikum, brothers and sisters. Welcome back to Radio Ramadan on 87.9 FM. I'm your host this morning for 11 till 12. My name is Zuffar Haq. We're talking about communities coming into Leicester. Our WhatsApp text number is 077 488 55055, and you can also call into the studio on the phone, which is 0116 4822 086. We're listening to Ayub Majothi. Ayub, you was just talking. You know, you came in 1972. You were from the Ugandan Asians, and there was Kenyan Asians already here. So, what communities actually arrived in Leicester at that time, and what difference were they making?
Right. In 1975, there was some problem with the president of Malawi, Hastings Banda, and he deported quite a few people, and mainly most of them were Memons.
So they ended up coming to Leicester as well?
Many of them, because of the facilities in Leicester here, the mosques, and the industries already here, they started coming to Leicester, and some of them had sent their children to study here, actually. And I'm grateful those people came here, because whoever came to Leicester and they had any difficulty, for some reason, they were directed to me. I would meet them and refer them to various organizations for their problems. And they did sit down. They started opening their own businesses, taking out loans, helping people. And
so what kind of people are they? Because they're different to what you were talking about, the Kenyans and the Ugandans to a degree, aren't they? Mayman community.
Yeah. They didn't believe in working for others. This is what my opinion is. They want to work for themselves and be their own masters. Very charitable people, very, very charitable, very helpful. People call them stingy, they call them this and that, but it's their personal opinion, and you can't stop people saying things about others. But I think they have contributed quite a lot, together with the Kenyan Asians who started coming to Leicester from 1963, when there was a mini exodus from Kenya. They are the ones who actually encouraged Uganda Asians to go into business.
So it's a combination of all these people coming together, almost like a melting pot. And bringing different characteristics. I mean, were there adventurous people and taking on different challenges?
Yes, they were actually. I mean, if they took any new business, because they came with business acumen to this country, and any knowledge you have, if you don't use it, then of course it's going to stay. And at the back of the mind, education is highly valued in our society, and they would say, let's do things for our children now. Let them be educated. Some of them are not allowed to have grants to go to university, but they could pay for it, because they were earning money, they were paying taxes, they were doing everything which a good citizen does. So that way, the family values were maintained, and in fact, I mentioned this, but then we had the Somalis come in from mainly from EU, and I think in about the last 15 years, we must have about 25 to 30,000 Somalis in Leicester here.
Yes, that's right. Yeah, must be toward that number.
Yeah, so there is a contribution from everybody, and these people brought knowledge with them. They were engineers, teachers, accountants. Like I know people from Malawi, especially the Memon community, highly professional people. Nobody stopped educating themselves and bettering themselves in the field in which they were good. And after 48 years in Leicester, I can see the children who were not born at that time. They are in all fields, in medicine, education, accountancy, you name it, engineering, they're everywhere.
And also in businesses, in the business world, lots of Asian people doing fantastically well, lots of different ideas of opening businesses. You just have to look along across any of the roads in Leicester, in the city centre or in Evington Road, Melton Road, lots of businesses run by Asians, banks run by Asians, insurance companies running by Asians. So, it's been a real thriving industry, vibrant industry. And, how have you found that?
Yeah, you're quite right. You hit the nail on the head here. Without the economy of this city grew, and as I said, these businesses they established a reputation throughout the region and became a regular part of Leicester's wider social scene. Now, when you talk about industries and businesses, just imagine how many people they are employing, how many families are supported because these people are employed by these businesses. Once these people had established themselves and saved up money, they start setting up other businesses. Look at Leicester Paper Factory in Hamilton.
Yeah, so we had we had lots of businesses setting up, and they've grown and grown
900
and grown.
people employed by there.
Yes.
Packaging companies. So when this happens, these businesses had a major impact on city's economy, with industries, hosiery, especially. I think there are more than 1,000 small units of hosiery in Leicester.
Ayuba, you mentioned, lots of your students came to the UK. How have they fared? The children that you saw when you were teaching in Uganda. How have they fared, and how are they doing?
They're doing very well. As I said, from my small town where I taught in a primary school, there are at least 10 multimillionaires.
Yeah.
And they actually knew one thing. As I said, education is highly valued in our community, in our society. And every parent made sure that the children got the right education, the education they want to be good in. And they made a significant impact on professions such as law, health, education, photography, public service, media, you name it. The contribution of these children I taught in 3 big cities actually, Kampala, Jinja, and in my town, Iganga. And I'm in touch with these people. They've done very well all over the world actually, in Canada, in America, Australia, New Zealand. They knew one thing: with hard work and the opportunities they had to study here, I think that was the greatest blessing the Asian community had when they came to the UK. And I'm grateful to this country who actually looked after us. And though we faced a lot of discrimination everywhere, there was a machinery there also. In 1976, the Restoration Act was established, and sex Discrimination Act. And people know that if they shout and if they talk, things will happen. But nothing will deter an Asian from doing what they want to do and achieve what they want to achieve. This is my opinion, and I think this is the right attitude. Without injuring anybody's feeling, harming anybody, you can be a law-abiding citizen and still achieve without discriminating. I was a magistrate, and when I was appointed, I went and told in my office, I got a letter from the Chancellor saying that I've been actually selected as a magistrate. They said, how much did you pay for it? Now, this is a white colleague telling me this. I said, excuse me, you think all Asians are corrupt and everything? If I bought my magistracy, then who took the money from me?
It's a different world.
A different world altogether.
Different world. We've got a text message coming in. Brother Ayub Majothi, a pleasure to hear about your journey. I would like to bring to your attention an event called Once Upon a Time, 50 years ago. In 2022, August, will be 50 years since the expulsion of the Ugandan Asians. We're arranging a worldwide event to celebrate and commemorate this once in a lifetime opportunity event. Look forward to your contribution. Ayuba, you must be one of the few people who's lived through that era and actually seen the change happening in front of your eyes from the Ugandan life to the life in Leicester and the changes in Leicester. So what would you say was your highlight that really made you your moment, your proudest moment, and your darkest moment as well?
Yeah. The highlight was when I got a job as a clerk doing night shift, and I said, I'm employed, but
Wow.
I'm not going to stop here. Now the will to do better, I said, I have to go and work for the civil service. I want to contribute something to this country by working for the government. And I got a job. With official receiver in bankruptcy and liquidation.
Now, just you saying that, your highlight of your 50 years in Leicester was getting that job. People nowadays take that for granted. That's not a highlight for lots and lots of other people. That is just something that ordinary run-of-the-mill, but it shows you the different era that you've lived in and the different era that the people living today are in. Totally different. Because
this small job as a filing clerk led me to better things, educating myself in the evening classes, giving civil service examination, being promoted to clerical officer, executive officer, and eventually still doing my voluntary social work and helping people in whatever way I can. One thing leads to another thing, and we should never stop doing what we want to do. And then Mr. Resham Mukaddam told me, look here, you are a material to become a magistrate. Why don't you apply? We need people from ethnic minority in the magistracy. And I applied and I was selected. That was another highlight, that now I'm in the judiciary where I know that I can be fair. I'll be dealing with all the communities, just shut my eyes, to look at the people, look at the color, nothing at all, just be there and according to the guideline, sentence people to whatever offenses they've committed. So this was my highlight. And again, another era when I became a magistrate, and that gave me an opportunity to contribute my knowledge, because being in the Pocklington Walk Magistrate's Office was actually, I was an asset to them. It's not that I'm not blowing my own trumpet, but we could exchange so many views in our retiring room.
And it makes such a difference to the way that people who are in this country think about it. Totally.
Yeah, completely. I mean, I was always, and I thank them because I learned so much. When you are in your retiring room, you are talking about so many subjects. Yeah. And it is all professionals, from a dustbin man to a surgeon who gave their services as a magistrate. We only had to go once a week. And I'm grateful to the city council who allowed me to have half a day off every week.
Yeah. And what was your darkest moment then? Was it that trip to coming out of Uganda?
That was my darkest moment, yes. Because I was living in a country where I was born. I was leaving my people behind whom I didn't know whether I was going to see them at all, because 7th of November was the deadline. And I had so many people in the family who were Uganda citizens who were at the mercy of United Nations. And United Nations did a great job in Uganda, taking about 10,000 people to resettlement camps in Italy, Belgium, Australia, Germany, and then Secretary General of United Nations High Commissioner of Refugees, Sadruddin Aga Khan, uncle of Aga Khan. He actually visited. My brother-in-law and my brother, Uganda citizens, went to Malta, an army camp in Malta. They were, in fact, that's so many countries offered 200 families, 100 families, and people are distributed to New Zealand, Australia, Canada, America. One of my brothers went to Norway, and the family is still there.
So people were split across the world, weren't they?
Yes, all over the world. And fortunately, when people say, how did you manage to travel so much in the world? I said, wherever I go, I know somebody, except in Japan and China. Yeah.
That's one big advantage of this whole
And I can
scenario.
see, from what I know, these Ugandans have contributed to whatever state they went in America or what part of Canada they went to, or in New Zealand or Australia. The contribution is there, and I've seen it for myself also when I visited those countries.
Ayub, thank you very much for being with us. But you're listening to Radio Ramadan on 87.9 FM. Our text number is 07748855055, and you can call in on 0116 4822 Ayub, one of the things that I think about is that you're refugees. The generations that came before us, all refugees, saw really tough times in that era from all communities, whether they came from Uganda, Kenya, they all saw these tough times. But do you think that people nowadays realize or have those same kind of issues, or is it different totally?
I think it's completely different at the moment because so many things have happened during our times, which has made life easy for people who are now arriving to this country.
So we should all be grateful, shouldn't we? Really grateful, because when I look at Leicester now, I just think, we take everything for granted, really.
Exactly. You use my words.
we really take everything for granted. We can pick up the phone. We don't even have to leave our house now. People will deliver halal food to our door,
Yes,
and I can remember, people telling me that they used to have to walk a mile to get halal food, or sometimes they used to have to originally go to Birmingham or Nottingham or different cities to get halal food. And,
But you see, in Western Asian culture also received a boost with a wider range of activities, which were being promoted, like cinemas, right? Had presented, we could see Bollywood movies here in Leicester. There was one cinema house on Melbourne Road, one on Greenland Road. We had Apsara on Belgrave Road. And if you know, since 1960s actually, then we had some Indian clubs, and they had dance centers also, were very popular. And Bollywood had such a strong attachment to Leicester that one of the Leicester's most famous restaurants, Bobby's, is named after one of the good famous Indian movie.
Yep. Ayub, it's been absolutely fantastic speaking to you. It's been a real pleasure.
It's a pleasure.
It's a real pleasure. I've learned so much because there's so many things that we don't know that happened at that era, and there's so much contribution from not just your generation, but the generation that came before that as well. So much sacrifice is being made by so many people that we all owe a debt to people like you and lots of other people across Leicester and Leicestershire who really are the forefathers and the pioneers of a great city like Leicester. So you're listening to Radio Ramadan on 87.9 FM. I know that we've got some special guests coming up on Shahid's show, which is Wazim Khan and Dr. Zuffar Haq. So please join his show in a few minutes' time. Thank you very much for joining us. Radio Ramadan and 87.9 FM.